Today, folks, ladies and gentlemen, what we are going to kind of look at least somewhat briefly, is going to be the overall process and the next branch of the United States government, which is the executive branch. So the goal here, guys, is for us to look at the roles and responsibilities and then what makes up all those different parts of the branch and how basically it has been created with what we call the executive branch here of the United States government. So, is there more to the executive branch than just the president? Yes, there is, in a very, very big way. So if you did not know, the president is the head of the executive branch, but it is not just the president of the United States that is involved with the executive branch, at least at this particular point. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the people that are a part of the executive branch, at least at this particular point. So inside of this, the president has executive departments. Okay, they have executive departments, and then they have agencies that all make up something that is headed up by what is called the presidential cabinet. So this is where you start to see a lot of different things that kind of happen right at this particular point in time. So the executive branch, guys, its main job and its main focus is not to create laws. Okay, it is to carry out the laws that are basically going to be promoted here in the United States government and everything else that goes into it, at least at this particular point. Okay, the president is the head, but like it says, he's only the tip of the iceberg. There are 15 different departments that report to the president. Each one of those departments, all right, has a head of it. Okay, has somebody that's in charge that is known as a secretary to lead each department. In each one of those departments, there are agencies that make up each one of those particular pieces of that. Those agencies basically report to the secretary, and the secretary reports to the president. All right? It is their job to carry out a law. What does that basically mean? What that basically means, as long as this point, is to basically decide how they're going to enforce it. Meaning they may enforce some rules more heavily than others. It is not the job of the president or the cabinet to create new rules. They take the rules that are in place and they massage them to basically say, hey, we're only going to enforce one thing or another more. We may focus on one thing more than something else. Something else may be a little bit more important than another particular topic, at least at that particular point in time. It is their job to maintain order and safety. It is their job to kind of do a couple of different things here and there to kind of guarantee their peace and go through it. But the biggest thing to make sure you understand kind of going along through this is the president's at the top. The secretary would kind of be like middle management level, if you wanted to think of it that way, like kind of a fast food restaurant. They're kind of the managers, and then the agencies are kind of like the cashiers or the workers of this entire thing. So like the president owns the fast food place, the secretaries are the head of the departments or the management level, and then kind of the regular cashier worker crew would be the agencies that do all the actual dirty work to make this thing kind of happen, at least at this particular point in time. So when we're going through all this, kind of going through some of these different questions, we'll kind of go through this. The executive branch only includes the president. Not necessarily. They have a secretary and all these other different kinds of things that go along with it. 15 members, 15 departments, excuse me. And you also see that they can enforce rules, not necessarily make rules. And some parts of the executive branch are businesses that government owns, as far as all these other different kinds of things. Okay, so if you go through all these other different kinds of things, right here, guys, has a list of some acronyms, all right, that you have, and I'm just going to show you guys how to do this. You can drop this text in here, and I'm going to type this out so you guys can see some of them. Each one of these particular areas, all right, and their meaning therein, these acronyms have different parts. So like this one is a Department of Justice. This is one of the 15 departments that we have, at least at this particular point. One of their agencies is the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So let's say, for an example, if you guys wanted to kind of go through this and look at it, if the president has a little bit of an issue as far as some safety things that are going along, he can go to the Department of Justice, who would then go to the FBI and say they want to fix a couple of things. Maybe it's something like some crime and some things that have been happening in some cities. They wanted to kind of control it. The president can go to the Department of Justice, who basically has, excuse me, their secretary, which is called the Attorney General, who would report to the FBI, and the FBI would go through there and kind of have a couple of different issues that go along with it, at least at that particular point in time. So you see a lot of different things that have some major issues with it as well, and you start to see a lot of different things that kind of overlap, at least at that particular point. All right, and then you've got some more stuff here where, again, where is all this stuff found? If you go through this particular PDF or this particular file, you notice right here it has all these little summaries and all this other stuff in the middle of it. You can use that to kind of help you along and answer some of these different abbreviations. I use these abbreviations to kind of go quick, kind of like when you're texting, to make things a little quicker as far as all that stuff goes. So, with those 15 different branches, or excuse me, 15 different departments in tow, each one of them has a secretary that is involved and responsible for all this. So each one of those has this. So like Secretary of blank, we need to invest more in solar electricity. That might fall along the lines of Secretary of Energy. We need to combat bark beetles in the national forest. That might go along with, excuse me, the Secretary, all right, of Agriculture. So each section has, or each individual department has over one area that they're basically overall running and doing all these other different kinds of things at the exact same time. Okay, so that's where you start to see a lot of different issues with it as well. The next one that you have here as far as this stuff goes, you got a short little quiz. Identify the executive agency most likely to act. So like right here, the Veterans Educational Assistance Act. So if you look at that picture, it's kind of already in the question, so hopefully that's not too terrible there. This one right here, Protect America, Intelligence Community. Which one might protect? Maybe a little bit of security there. So just go through and match up all these different acts and laws that kind of go along with it, at least at this particular point. So when you have the cabinet and all these different people, all right, this is the big thing to make sure you understand. What is the difference between regulation, okay, and enforcement? Regulation is when you create new laws and everything else. Enforcement is when you basically go through and actually make it happen on the ground floor. This is the biggest thing to kind of look at. And the biggest question you can look at is, are you making new rules, or are you adjusting rules already in place? That's the biggest difference between regulation, right, and enforcement. Regulation means you change some of the rules and you basically decide what you're going to go through. Enforcement basically means, okay, we're only going to worry about this, this, and this, and put this stuff into effect. Well, other stuff's really not going to matter at the end of the day. So you start to see a lot of different changes that happen in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms, at least at this particular point in time. All right. The next one is just a checklist. The Department of Labor works to protect public health and safety. Are the items below a part of the Department of Labor? So you've got 15 different areas. This one looks at this particular idea of the Department of Labor. Labor would have to do with anything that has to do with working. So is this an example of enforcement regulation? Monitor workplace to see. Again, that would be kind of regulation. Employees must use a certain method. That's enforcement. Employees must. So you notice this is when you actually have to do things. All right. When you don't really have to do something, that's more along the lines of regulation. Monitor, evaluate. That's really just watching stuff happen. You're not actually doing anything as far as the change goes. So you start to see a little bit of clarification there when you're going through it. Are you actually doing stuff, or are you making things? So like right here, write a sentence using the words president, executive, cabinets, and departments. And that's where you just kind of see the president can direct. The president is in charge of the departments where the secretaries direct the agencies to kind of go through it. The executive branch is the largest branch in our government. Yes, it is, because of the amount of people that work in it. There are literally thousands of people that work as far as the executive branch. The purpose of the branch is to carry out laws that the legislative branch create. The executive branch is only the president. No, it has 15 members of cabinet and has thousands of members of agencies that run it, at least at the exact same time, all right, at that particular point. So this is the basic idea, guys, of the executive branch. So if you had to be in charge of one executive department, which one would you choose? Remember, there are 15 of them. All right, go back through that particular document and see all the different 15 branches, 15 departments of the executive branch that basically match up with everything else, at least at that particular point. All right, and then the last thing, an example of how an executive department enforces a policy. I can't say this enough. Agency, agency, agency. There are literally, guys, thousands of agencies. These agencies are, again, if you look at it kind of like the overall grand scheme of things, if you're looking at it like a fast food restaurant, the president is the person who owns the restaurant. The cabinet are the managers, and then the agencies are the workers, the cashiers, and the cooks. All right. So again, it is the agencies that actually do the dirty work. Those are the ones that actually enforce some of the rules. All right. So again, guys, I hope that kind of clears up this idea. The executive branch is headed up by the president, but there's a lot more to it. 15 departments headed up by 15 secretaries that make up the cabinet. Thousands of agencies all scattered in those 15 departments that make up what we call the executive branch of the United States. Thousands of people that work in the executive branch of the United States, all right, of America, at least at this particular point.